Good afternoon. National Assembly for Wales is now in session, and the first item this afternoon questions the First Minister. And question 1, Mohammed Ashgar.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. First Minister, will the First Minister outline his strategic priorities for the sport in 2015, please?
Yes, our priorities for sport are set out in the programme for government.
Thank you for the short answer, Minister. A recent report predicted that Cardiff could see its economy boosted by some £316 million as a result of hosting Rugby World Cup games this autumn. Will the First Minister advise the Assembly what action he and his government have taken and will take to ensure we maximise the benefits of holding the Rugby World Cup in Cardiff?
Oh, that work is well in hand, of course. We know full well that the stadium, as it brings thousands of people into Cardiff and the surrounding area, helps in terms of accommodation and hotels, helps in terms of the hostelries in the area and restaurants, of course. And we are fortunate indeed that the Millennium Stadium is the biggest among several stadiums, of course, that add so much to the economy of Cardiff.
John Griffiths.
Yes, First Minister, our Welsh Government's sports strategy, Climbing Higher, goes back quite a number of years now. And with recent developments such as Tanny Gray's report and its importance for physical education in schools, the closer links between the health agenda and the sport and physical activity agenda, I wonder now whether it's time for a new Welsh Government sports strategy which would closely involve all government departments.
Well, Climbing Higher was launched in 2005 and it set out the government's strategic direction for sport and physical activity over a 20-year period. In 2010, the Creating an Active Wales Action Plan introduced specific targets which are based on the progress that have been made. What I wouldn't want to do is to duplicate what is being done at the moment, but that said, the Physical Activity Executive Group was examined in 2013 to examine new opportunities and to refresh our approach to increasing levels of physical activity in Wales. And in December of last year, Cabinet agreed an action plan drawn up by the group, and work is now underway on planning the next steps.
Bethan Jenkins.
First Minister, you may or may not be aware that in the Avon Valley, it seems to be that the local community have been forced into a position whereby the pool will close if a social partnership is not set up by January 2016. I'm sure you would agree with me that we need a strategic outlook in terms of where we take swimming for the future, because if pools like this are closed in deprived communities, people's health will inevitably deteriorate and they will not be able to access facilities as easily as they can do at the moment. What will your government do to support this particular partnership?
Well, I mean, this is a matter ultimately for Neath Tarbert Council, but where we can help social partnerships to come together to run a facility such as a swimming pool, then of course, if such a partnership were to come forward, we would do what we can in order to help them. I'm aware of examples elsewhere in Wales where that has worked, but much of it depends, of course, on the condition of a building when it's first purchased, the amount of capital that might be needed to refurbish it, and of course the people coming forward to run such a partnership. But I know this is an issue that is important in the Avon Valley. I'd encourage people to examine the possibilities of forming a social partnership, and we'll do what we can to help.
Question 2, Baron Davis.
Presiding Officer, will the First Minister make a statement, please, on the projections for the Welsh economy?
Well, over the short term, Welsh economic indicators generally track those of the UK quite closely. UK prospects, as we see today, remain highly uncertain, but we know that our policies have a major impact over the longer term, such as Jobs Growth Wales.
Thank you, First Minister. Do you share my belief that electrification of both the main line and valleys lines presents us with a once-in-a-generation chance to invigorate the economy and increase social mobility across South Wales? And on that basis, would you outline what work you are undertaking to capitalise on this investment, and what specific outline projects you are perhaps commissioning to ensure we squeeze all the added value out of this investment to provide more employment and long-term solution to the deprivation and poverty that exists along South Wales?
Well, 2 points. First of all, of course, I'm glad that an agreement was reached with the UK government, despite the fact that no support came from the party opposite, but we got there in the end. And secondly, of course, he is right to say that as far as the main line is concerned and valley lines in terms of electrification, they do offer the opportunity to connect communities more effectively and more quickly than before, and of course to make sure that there is no threat to mainline service, particularly in the long term. And I'm very glad, of course, that the UK government listened carefully to our arguments.
Rheinhard Bjornworth.
Diolch Llywydd. Mae ffigurau'r ONS yr wythnos diwetha'n cadarnhau be welson ni ym mis Rhagfyr, sef bod na newid cyfeiriad wedi bod o ran y farchnad swyddi yng Nghymru. Mi oedd diweithdra wedi cyrraedd yr un cyfartaledd a'r deyrnas gyfunol yn eitha diweddar. Rwan mae Cymru ar 7% o'i gymharu â 5.8% i'r deyrnas gyfunol a 43 o filoedd o swyddi wedi cael eu colli yng Nghymru dros 2014. Ydy'r Prif Weinidog yn cymryd cyfrifoldeb am fethianna i Lywodraeth o ran yr hyn da ni'n weld efo cyflogaeth, a be ydy'r allwedd gan y Prif Weinidog i sicrhau bod y diriwiad yma'n cael ei atal?
Wel, os gofio, wrth gwrs, i blaid oedd yn gyfrifol am yr economi am bedair mlynedd, a mae beth wedi symud yn y cyfeiriad iawn ers hynny. Yn enwedig gyda Jobs Growth Wales, yn enwedig wrth gwrs gyda y ffaith bod diweithra wedi cwmpo. Mi'n wir i weid dros y flwyddyn diwetha bod y trend wedi bod mynd yn y cyfeiriad iawn. Mae yna blip wedi bod y tro hyn ynglyn â'r cwarter hyn, a mae'r un beth wedi digwydd yn yr Alban hefyd. Beth ni'n neud wrth gwrs yw sicrhau bod mwy o fuddsoddiad yn dod mewn, a mae Pinewood yn un enghraifft o hwnna, CGI yn enghraifft arall, a ffaith bod ni'n gefnogol er enghraifft o prosiectau fel Surf Snowdonia sydd yn holl bwysig i ddyffryn Conwy. Mae'n dangos yr effaith ni'n gallu cael fel Llywodraeth er mwyn sicrhau bod diweithra yn dod lawr yn yr hir dymor.
Ellen Powers.
Diolch, Lewis. In July last year, when Welsh unemployment rates did fall faster than the rest of the UK, you were happy to take the credit for that. You said that with youth unemployment falling faster in Wales than any other part of the UK, it's clear that Jobs Growth Wales is having a major impact in creating opportunities. But unemployment rates in Wales, whilst they're still falling, of course, the rest of the UK, they are falling faster consistently over a period of time. OECD recommendations to make sure that youth unemployment is tackled is to invest in skills over job creation schemes. When will you start to see investment going into those kinds of programs instead?
What is Jobs Growth Wales other than the scheme that provides young people with skills in order to get employment? And of course it's a scheme that was put in place partially because the Future Jobs Fund was abolished by her party. And we wanted to make sure that we supported young people to get skills, supported people to get jobs in the longer term, our young people, and to make up for the gap that was left as a result of the policies of her party, I have to say.
We now move to questions from the party leaders, and first this afternoon, the leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, today sees the publication of 2 reports highlighting the failure of a government to deliver consistent improvements. One report from the Wales Audit Office shows how more than 1 in 10 patients have to wait over 6 months for non-emergency treatment. And the Auditor-General goes on to say that the current approach to delivering services does not deliver sustainably low waiting times. Now, I'm sure you'd agree with me, patients waiting for that non-emergency treatment are fed up of waiting. When will we see policies being delivered that are going to make sure that people waiting for non-urgent treatment get the help, service and the healthcare that they need and deserve?
Well, we have put, of course, extra resources into the health service and are working with the health boards in order to make sure that more and more people, and most people get treatment within 10 weeks, more and more people get the treatment in the time that they would want. I must say, I do welcome the leader of the Liberal Democrats' approach in this regard, in the sense she has put forward the idea of a commission, an all-party commission. I think that is something that has merit. Whether it can be done in the political times that we live in, with an election coming this year and next year, is difficult to assess. But I do think the time has come for an all-party commission to look at the health service and to come up with an honest appraisal of where the health service should go in the future. We're happy to play our role in that, and I'm sure she is as well.
Thank you very much, First Minister. But could I move then on to the issue of education, since I've been able to convince you of the merits of our arguments on health? When Estyn published their annual report last year, you told me then what is lacking is consistency. There is no question about that. Well, you weren't wrong, First Minister. At best, today's Estyn annual report paints a mixed bag across Wales again. Last year, standards were failing at our secondary schools. This year, Estyn points to falling standards in our primary schools. Last year, our children were struggling with literacy. This year, Estyn points to struggles with numeracy. Now, the inability of your government to deliver real change is in danger of condemning a generation of young Welsh people to emerge into the workplace underskilled and underprepared for the needs of employers. When will the countless speeches, initiatives, programmes that you announce as a government actually see real, consistent delivery in our education system?
We're seeing it. We're seeing the improvements in secondary schools. We're seeing the improvements in GCSE results. which we hope this year will be at least at a par with England, after having been behind for some years. We see Schools Challenge Cymru, the money is going into secondary schools there, and we see the People Development Grant, which her party, of course, suggested. There is work still to be done in primary schools. We see that literacy has improved. We see that there's still work to do with numeracy, but things are certainly moving in the right direction. If you look at the Estyn report, it's absolutely clear to me that education is improving in Wales. There will still be some areas where there needs to be greater improvement, and that's what we will focus on.
First Minister, the number of primary schools requiring re-inspection and follow-up visits by Estyn is increasing. The one piece of really good news in Estyn's report today is that the gap between those children on free school meals and those that are not is closing, and that's happened as a result of Liberal Democrat policy. Now, First Minister, I appreciate that things can't be changed overnight in our education system and in our health service. I understand that. But you've had 15 years as a Labour government to change things, and you personally have had 5 years as First Minister to see real results and change. Do you not recognise that the vast majority of Welsh people can't opt out? They can't afford private schools and they can't afford private insurance for their healthcare. When will you provide consistently improving public services that I think the Welsh people deserve?
I think what our young people deserve is not seeing the level of tuition fees that her party's imposed in England. One of the major promises that her party put forward, not her personally and as Welsh Liberal Democrats, but in the general election, was broken almost immediately. And we have kept faith with Welsh students. We've kept the education maintenance allowance. Her party voted to abolish it in England. We have made sure that our schools have improved. It's not right to say that somehow there's only one thing that's improved in Welsh education, and that's as a result of a Lib Dem policy. Clearly not. We see what our secondary schools are doing. We are not complacent, and we know there's still work to be done in some aspects of primary school work. But the one thing we will not move away from is our commitment to increase spending on schools. We've done that year after year after year. And also we will make sure that students who come from less well-off backgrounds are not penalised by the tuition fee hikes England has had, and also by the education maintenance allowance abolition that the Liberal Democrats supported there.
We now move to Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, this morning a written statement was issued by the Minister for Local Government ruling out the 3 voluntary mergers that had been put before the Welsh Government for its consideration. One of those 3 was a clear footprint of what Williams had identified in all its modelling over what would be a successful reorganisation of local government. Can you explain what the current thinking of the Welsh Government is about the future shape of local government here in Wales in light of this rejection of the voluntary mergers?
Williams is still the preferred map, but not the definitive map. I will be asking the party leaders over the course of the next few weeks to meet with me in order that I can have a better assessment of what they think the map should look like. Because no party in this chamber has said that it wants things to stay as they are. I'd love to know where his party stands. I'd love to know where Plaid Cymru stands. They had a consultation. I don't know what happened to it. And with the Liberal Democrats. Let's have discussions with an open hand to make sure that, of course, that we get a map that is agreed. We have an idea of what the map should look like. What we need to do is to understand what the view of other parties is. Tell us, please, what your view is and what the map should look like.
First Minister, I think we clearly know what the Welsh Government view is on local government reorganisation. It's just a big black hole. You don't have a clue where you want to go, do you? In light of this statement this morning, it is quite clear that the relationship between you and local government has broken down. Unquestionable. What we are talking about here are people who depend on services, some of the most vulnerable people who depend on the services that local authority deliver. Many thousands of individuals who depend on local authorities for their jobs. And all we're getting is rants in the press and speeches from the local government minister, but without no coherent map forward over the shape of future government. So I ask again, is it the thinking of Welsh Government that Williams is the model that you are working to, or is it the model that has been talked about by some senior Labour figures of 6 large local authorities?
Williams is the preferred option, but I look forward to meeting with the Leader of the Opposition to hear what his view is on the map, because I have absolutely no idea, nor do the people of Wales. And I would prefer I would prefer to move forward on a basis where there is a map that is agreed by more than one party. I think that is the right way to move this forward. So let's do that. There's no point shouting about from the Plaid benches, because Plaid was supposed to have a consultation on this, and it got buried. I look forward to having a discussion with the party leaders to see what their position is.
I've asked you 2 questions now, First Minister, to try and gain some clearer understanding. Anyone connected with local government or anyone dependent on local government really is going to be a loss of your performance this afternoon, and in particular the actions of your local government minister, who has form on this, admittedly, in education, where he marched people up to the top of the hill and then let them run back down again. What people want is a coherent plan. You've had the time to digest Williams, and you've come forward with nothing. When are you going to set a timeline on the Welsh Government proactively engaging to develop a coherent plan for local government? Our plan is quite clear. Local people, you know what it is, First Minister, I have met with you and talked to you. But what is important here is to make sure that the map of local government bears a relation to the areas they serve and ultimately are capable of delivering the services that are required. We want to see health and social care as one. We want to see greater funding going directly to education. So therefore, are you signed up to the model of local government that would develop a truly borough-type council of local government that we used to historically have, with the major services delivered by health and social care as one, and education funded directly from the Welsh Government?
I have to say, in the discussions I've had with him, the only thing he said to me about what he wants local government to look like is that Mumma shouldn't avail of Glamorgan should be standalone authorities. That's all I've heard from him. Now, he invited me to express his view. That is his view. I don't care about anything else. As long as Mumma shouldn't avail are fine. I wonder why that is. Now, let's move away from this parochialism and this party political advantage that he's trying to promote. We have said that Williams is our preferred map. I would prefer it to talk to opposition party leaders to come to an agreed map by the summer. If we don't get agreement, we will publish our own map by the summer. But the invitation is there. And let's move away from the parochialism of the Tories. I take no lectures from a party. I take no lectures from a party that wants to cut education spending by 20%. They're very, very happy with those benches to talk about record-breaking health cuts. They say they want record-breaking cuts in education, record-breaking cuts in local government, record-breaking cuts in farming spending, record-breaking cuts in job creation. When it comes to breaking records, the leader of the opposition is the Roy Castle of those benches.
Did you all enjoy that? Good. So, no more, please, this afternoon. We now move to Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, yesterday the Environmental Audit Committee at Westminster published a significant report, and they made a key recommendation, and I quote, "A moratorium on the extraction of unconventional gas through fracking is needed to avoid both the inconsistency with our climate change obligations and to allow the uncertainty surrounding environmental risks to be fully resolved." Plaid Cymru supports a moratorium on fracking, First Minister, for the same reasons. Does the Welsh Government agree?
Well, you can't support a moratorium on fracking unless you agree that licensing should be devolved. I take the view licensing should be devolved, and then we should consider an effective moratorium on fracking.
Yesterday, First Minister, your party tabled amendments to the infrastructure bill in Westminster, which would see the devolution of licensing for onshore fracking to the Scottish Parliament. Not only did you exclude Wales from having the same powers, but your party refused to support a Plaid Cymru amendment for the devolution of these powers to Wales. Do you want these powers, the same powers, of licensing for onshore fracking, First Minister?
Yes.
Well, I think many people are going to be confused and frustrated, First Minister, that you say one thing and you do another. You've suggested concern about fracking, but you haven't made any representations to the Westminster Government, have you? You say that you want us to be offered the same powers as Scotland, but you take no action in order to gain such powers. You say that you oppose Tory austerity, but you vote with them to entrench it, and you bemoan Wales's fiscal disadvantage, but refuse to take greater responsibility for it. First Minister, you offer warm words when it comes to concerns raised about fracking, but you don't want the powers to stop them, do you? Otherwise, you would have instructed your MPs to support Plaid Cymru's amendment yesterday. When Plaid Cymru says it, we mean it. When Labour says it, you do one thing, you say one thing, and is it not the case that you actually do another?
I do wonder sometimes. I mean, the leader of Plaid Cymru asked me a direct question. I gave her the most direct answer imaginable, and she denies I ever gave her an answer. I mean, the reality is this. The issue of fracking is something that representations have been made on. It's part of the St David's Day process. We want to see it devolved to Wales. There is no question that somehow Scotland should get something and Wales should not. And it's part of the St David's Day process. You are either part of that process or you are not. The last thing we should do is move to a situation where we try and have powers given to us in an ad hoc fashion. We need Silk Part 1, we need Silk Part 2, we need delivery of Smith with regards to Wales and discussion about that, and then we will see progress. That is the position of Welsh Labour, and that is the position, I believe, of the people of Wales.
No action.
We now move back to questions on the paper. Having finished first leaders' questions, is now question 3, and it's Elin Jones.
A drafodaethau, mae'r Prif Weinidog wedi cael parthed i yswiriant llifogydd I fusnesau.
Wel, rhywbeth I Lywodraeth y Dain Syniedig yw hwn, wrth gwrs, ond wnaethon ni hymateb i'r ymgynghoriad haf diwethaf I weithredu siwrant o dan fflyd ri. Fe wedwn ni wrth Lywodraeth y Deunas Unedig bod yna broblemau mawr ynglyn â'r reoliadau oedd ar y gweill ar y pryd hynny. A ni'n croesawu wrth gwrs y ffaith bod Llywodraeth y Dain Unedig wedi cymryd penderfyniad I newid y reoliadau ar ôl beth wedwn ni fel Llywodraeth wrthyn nhw.
Broblem sy'n parhau Prif Weinidog yw fod busnesau yn cael ei eithrio o'r cytundeb yna gyda cwmnïau insiwrans. Busnesau yn ynytholaeth I methu cael insiwrans rhag llifogydd ar hyn o bryd. Rhai o'r busnesau yna'n rhai cymarol fawr ac yn hir sefydlog, ac be mae hyn yn golygu yw fod busnesau ddim yn gallu benthyg a datblygu I busnesau oherwydd y diffyg insiwrans yma. A wnewch chi fel Llywodraeth yn gyntaf gweithio gyda rhai o'r busnesau sy'n ffeindio'u hunain yn y sefyllfa anodd yma, ond hefyd codi'r peth unwaith eto gyda Llywodraeth y Deyrnas Gyfunol, fod angen o ddod I gytundeb gyda y cwmnïau insiwrans a'r gynllun sydd yn cynnwys hefyd busnesau yn hytrach na dim ond tai preswyl.
Wi digon hapus I ofyn i'r gweinidog I sgrifennu I helpu busnesau masnachol. Mi'n wir I weid, wrth gwrs, bod nhw ddim yn rhan o fflyd ri, a felly os symudwn ni ymlaen y ffordd hwnna, wrth gwrs, felly fydd yna ateb i'r aelod.
Nick Ramsey?
First Minister, flooding insurance might well be the responsibility of the UK government, but roads are yours. You'll be aware, no doubt, that this winter, as in previous years, flooding has closed the A4042 Llanellan Bridge just south of Abergavenny in my constituency. The A4042 is a key strategic route and very important to local businesses and indeed regional businesses. Has any assessment been made of the impact of these ongoing closures on local business and the wider regional economy? And what progress has been made with the implementation of the Trunk Road Review, which I know the Minister referred to in questions I asked her last year?
Well, first of all, we're not responsible for all roads. We're responsible for trunk roads and motorways. The issue of non-trunk roads is a matter, of course, for local authorities. I confess I don't know whether there is a trunk road. He's nodding at me, and I accept his word, of course, on that. Where there are issues that are identified, of course, then we seek to address those issues as part of a coherent plan, and he will know, of course, that the National Transport Plan deals with the macro issues of transport, and then, of course, it's a matter for the agencies that work on behalf of the Welsh Government to identify problems and deal with them quickly.
William Powell?
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, residents in affected areas of Wales will welcome anything that the Welsh Government can do to improve engagement over flood insurance, but the wider problem of properties affected is surely are going to be alleviated if we can get less properties and less businesses developed in flood areas. And to that end, First Minister, will you give consideration to working with your Minister for Natural Resources to actually build in a provision within the forthcoming planning bill to allow statutory undertakers, the water companies, Dŵr Cymru, Welsh Water and Severn Trent, to be full statutory consultees in planning applications in the future, so as to avoid a situation where we have properties, homes and businesses developed in areas of risk?
Well, it is an interesting suggestion. I mean, this shouldn't happen anyway. TAN 15 covers this. I remember introducing TAN 15 to this chamber, or maybe even the previous chamber, but certainly before the Assembly. And at the time, it was seen as extreme, because it covered, in the case of the properties of the land most at risk, 1 in 1,000 year flood risk occurrences. Now, of course, we know that the pattern of climate change is such that the weather's become even more unpredictable. And we will always, of course, look to see what can be done to strengthen any TAN. But the reality is, this should not be happening now in appropriate development, particularly on the land that's most at risk.
Question 4, Susie Davies.
Diolch, Llywydd. Will the First Minister provide an update on the Welsh Government's capital investment in Wales's tourism sector?
Yes, we provide a range of investment in Wales's tourism, including through our Tourism Investment Support Scheme. We've also delivered a £35 million capital investment programme through the Environment for Growth Convergence programme, which has developed 7 iconic centres of excellence in Wales, as long as coastal improvements along our beaches.
Well, thank you for that answer, First Minister. The Tourism Investment Support Scheme has seen funding to approved projects halved since 2011-12, although some businesses are getting 6-figure support. Larger grants are required to be repaid in part, so can you tell me whether repaid monies are ring-fenced for reinvestment in the scheme, in which case why have approvals halved, or does that money go elsewhere?
No, we would expect the money to return, of course, to the place where it came from, namely the scheme. The intention is, of course, to make sure that we are able to help businesses, but to help more businesses through recirculating money. That's an important principle that we operate to, and there are many businesses that have benefited, of course, from the scheme and the way that it operates now.
Rwy'n Biodd.
Diolch, Llywydd. Ydy'r Prif Weinidog yn gytuno galla codi'r rhes arall o beilona trydan ar draws Ynys Môn fod yn niweidiol iawn i'r diwydiant twristiaeth. Ydy o'n cytuno dyle asesiad manwl iawn gael ei gynnal o gost pelona i'r economi yn cynnwys twristiaeth yn ogystal ag asesiad o'r effaith ar gost eiddo preifat. Ac nad ydy hwn, fel da ni'n gwybod, yn fater datganoledig, a wneith y Prif Weinidog ddatgan ei gefnogaeth i'r ymgyrch aml bleidiol yn erbyn pelona ac i ofyn i'r grid edrych o ddifri ar opsiwn arall heblaw mynd ar pelona ar draws y tir ac i wneud buddsoddiad iawn i sicrhau hynny.
Wy'n credu yn bwysig dros ben i sicrhau bod unrhyw cynllun i fynd i redeg pelona yn cynllun sydd yn cael y gefnogaeth fwyaf. Wrth gofio bod rhaid bod unrhyw cynllun yn ymarferol. Wy'n deall wrth gwrs beth yw terminadau bobl ar Ynys Môn ynglyn â rai o'r cynlluniau sydd wedi dod i rym lan i nawr, a byddwn ni'n erbyn, wrth gwrs, i'r Grid Cenedlaethol i sicrhau bod nhw'n cysylltu yn banwl gyda bobl lleol cyn symud mlaen gyda unrhyw prosiect. Dyle hwn cael ei ddatganoli, wrth gwrs. Wy'n sylw bydd fe a fi yn hlwm ynglyn â'r barn yna, ond ar hyn o bryd, wrth gwrs, mae'n rhywbeth i Lywodraeth y Deyrnas Unedig i ganiatáu yn anffodus.
Question 5, Simon Thomas.
A wnaeth y Prif Weinidog ddatganiad ynglyn â adroddiad blynyddol diweddara y prif olygydd a'i mawrhydi dros addysg hyfforddiant yng Nghymru.
Wel, ni'n croesawu adroddiad cynhwysfawr terfynol y prif arolygydd presennol, a hefyd yn diolch i Estyn am ei waith.
Diolch Prif Weinidog ac yn nodi y gwaith da mae Ann Keane wedi wneud dros y blynyddoedd. Wy'n sylwi yn yr adroddiad yma, mae'n dweud bod hwn wedi bod yn flwyddyn gymysg y gyfer safona mewn darparwyr addysg a hyfforddiant, a bod safona yn y sector ysgolion cynradd wedi dirywio. Nawr, gan bod Estyn yn adolygu pob ysgol, coleg, man darparu hyfforddiant ac awdurdod addysg yng Nghymru a canfod y problemau hyn, a byddwch chi'n agor drws Llywodraeth Cymru i Estyn adolygu eich adran chitha addysg a hyfforddiant fel bod ni'n cael deall yn iawn ble mae'r problem.
Wel, byddwn nhw'n rhaid wneud hwnna a hefyd sicrhau bod nhw'n gwneud bob awdurdod lleol hefyd yng Nghymru.
Mae'n naid.
Dwi ddim yn credu bod nhw'n rhywbeth sydd yn dod o dan rym estyn. Mae hwn yn rhywbeth wrth gwrs i ni'n wneud a ni'n atebol i bobl Cymru yn uniongyrchol ynglyn â hwn. Ond mae'n siwmedig i weld beth sy'n digwydd yn ysgolion cynradd, cael anogol i weld beth sy'n digwydd yn ysgolion cyfun, ac wrth gwrs ni mo'n sicrhau bod yna fwy o gysondeb, a sicrhau bod ysgolion cynradd yn parhau i wella yn y dyfodol. Fe fydd na ymateb gan y Gweinidog ta beth ym mis Chwefror, a felly bydd y Gweinidog yn fanylu yn fwy ynglyn â ymateb y Llywodraeth ynglyn â hwn.
Christine Chapman.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, as the Estin report notes, attendance rates in Welsh schools have improved significantly through concerted action by schools, local authorities and the Welsh Government. Truancy impacts on educational success, and as Professor Ken Reid reminded us, evidence shows that absence from school is a plea for help. If we are to narrow the gap in attainment for children from disadvantaged backgrounds, does the First Minister agree that tackling absenteeism is crucial to this, and will this continue to remain a focus for his government?
Yes, absolutely. And the member is quite right to point out the significant improvement that there's been in tackling absenteeism. It shows that what has been put in place is working. If I remember rightly, on the 11th of December last month, the Minister did issue a statement clarifying school attendance regulations in Wales relating to holidays and term time and fixed penalty notices. That's not the entire picture, of course, because I very much welcome the work that has been done by schools and LEAs in order to ensure that attendance improves.
Angela Burns.
Presiding Officer, I too would like to add my thanks to Anne Keane for her sterling work as Chief Inspector of Schools here in Wales. And this is a report that is a bit of a curate's egg. I agree with Simon Thomas that our primary schools do seem to still be suffering. But another area that is highlighted is the provision in pupil referral units. We have a disastrous record in pupil referral units, as has been evinced by a number of other reports. And so, First Minister, my question to you is, will you ensure that the findings on the pupil referral units are incorporated into the proposed bill on additional learning needs? And will you commit to ensuring that that bill comes before us all in good time for us to be able to examine it and hopefully pass a successful bill into legislation before the end of the Assembly term?
I think the member raises a fair point in terms of pupil referral units. We have seen difficulties in some LEAs with pupil referral units, and those difficulties have repeated themselves quite often. I think the first stage is for the Minister, of course, to give the formal response to the report. There'll be an opportunity, obviously, for the member to ask the Minister about this, and then, of course, the government will suggest a way forward in terms of how to strengthen PRUs in the future.
Alan Roberts.
Llywydd. Prif Weinidog, mae'n debyg bod pob un ohonyn ni'n parchu barn y prif arolygydd a dyn ni'n diolch iddi am ei gwaith. Mae'n ddarlun cymysglyd o fewn yr adroddiad, ond ydych chi'n pryderu o gwbl efo'r datganiad gan y prif arolygydd bod yna anghydbwysedd o hyd rhwng buddsoddi mewn mecanweithiau sy'n dwy'n ysgolion a darparwyr eraill i gyfri a buddsoddi mewn strategaethau i feithrin gallu yn y gweithlu gan gynnwys y gallu i arwain. Mae hi'n deud bod yna anghydbwysedd yn y ffordd mae'r Llywodraeth yn ymwneud â hyn.
Dydy, wrth gwrs, datganiad sydd wedi cael ei wneud gan prif arolygydd, a bydd hwn yn rhywbeth yn sbyn siwr. Bydd Gweinidog yn delio da pan bydd ei ar ei drad mis nesaf.
Question 6, Antoinette Sandbadge.
Presiding Officer, will you, First Minister, outline what support the Welsh Government is providing to help people in rural Wales own their own homes?
Well, we offer a range of support in rural areas, including, of course, the Help to Buy Wales scheme, which has helped helped individuals to buy more than 2,000 properties in Wales.
Well, of course, your Help to Buy scheme, Minister, only applies to new builds, and there are very few of those in rural areas. In fact, most rural areas are excluded. And by limiting the right to buy or seeking to abolish the right to buy for people in owning their own council properties, the options for particularly young people to get on the housing ladder in rural Wales has been severely curtailed. Given the lack of help given to people in rural areas, will you commit to look at the figures again in relation to Help to Buy and see whether or not you would extend the scheme to properties other than new builds?
What young people need is the ability to access more accommodation, and rural Wales suffered more than anywhere else with the right to buy. Powys lost more than half of its social housing, under her party. We know that over 40% of, there's been a 40% reduction in public housing over the past 35 years. Now, of course, we are able to build more houses. What sense did it make to say you have to sell houses to people? Fine, now that's one suggestion. And then you can't reuse the money to build public houses. I mean, that was a deliberate attempt to reduce the amount of public housing available, and Wales, and rural Wales particularly, suffered immensely because of that policy. Added to the fact now that we know that the UK government apparently is going to come forward with a policy that would mean that social housing is sold, but the money that's brought in isn't enough to replace it. You know, that's the reality of the situation. We cannot go on seeing the leakage of public housing that is available to young people, particularly in rural areas, and we must make sure that the amount of accommodation, reasonably priced accommodation, is where it was in the 1970s before the party opposite brought in this policy and forbade councils to actually replace the houses that were being sold. That was the utter lunacy of it.
Joyce Watson.
What young people in rural Wales tell me is that what they expect is a secure, affordable and good quality place to live. And home ownership, low-cost home ownership is part of that mix, but so too is social housing and private renting. And I'd like to see more cooperative options available. So, First Minister, would you join me in congratulating Carmarthenshire County Council on its very bold decision to be the first council in Wales to suspend the right to buy, a policy that has, as you've just said, wasted millions of pounds of public money and contributed towards homelessness and housing needs across Wales. And are you confident, First Minister, that your government will meet its target of 10,000 affordable homes and bring back into use 5,000 empty homes during the course of this Assembly?
We are confident that we will reach that target. What we could not do is to, as it were, fill up the bath while not putting the plug in properly, which is what was happening in effect. And we know, I mean, you have to look at some parts of rural Wales. Some houses that were originally council houses are now second homes, or they're actually in the private rented sector. So there's a private landlord now renting those homes out instead of a council. We cannot go on with that policy now. In fact, it's a policy that has seen fewer and fewer people anyway buying their houses. We need to make sure we have good quality social housing for our young people in rural Wales, in urban Wales, and in order to do that, we have to make sure that the money is there to deliver on that. It will not happen if we continue with the right to buy, because houses were not replaced over 30 years, and we have seen a hammering of the social housing sector in Wales during that time, and more young people are able to gain accommodation, and we intend to stop that.
Claire Griffith.
Diolch Llywydd. Un rhwystredigaeth sy'n cael ei godi'n gyson gyda fi o gyfeiriad awdurdodau lleol yw'r ffaith bod yr arolygaeth gynllunio yn y broses o greu cynlluniau datblygu lleol wedi bod yn mynnu lleihau y canran o dai fforddadwy sydd yn cael ei darparu o fewn y cynlluniau hynny, a hynny wrth gwrs yn golygu wedyn bod yna lai o opsiynau o safbwynt pobl yn dod i berchen i tai mewn ardaloedd gwledig. Os gyda chi gyd ymdeimlad ar rhwystredigaeth yna, ac os oes beth ych chi'n trio wneud i gywiro hynny?
Wel, mae yna ganllawiaeth sicr ynglyn â hwn, ynglyn â faint o dai fforddadwy dyle fod mewn i'r datblygiad. Os oes unrhyw tystiolaeth bod y nifer hwnna yn lleihau, bydde diddordeb gyda ni sicrhau bod ni'n ystyried y tystiolaeth hynny. Ni wedi gweld, wrth gwrs, rai awdurdodau fel Sir Gar, fel wedodd yr aelod sydd wedi sicrhau bod yna ddigon bod yna fwy o dai ar gael i bobl yn y dyfodol. A byddwn ni'n erbyn, wrth gwrs, i awdurdodau lleol a hefyd yr arolygaeth i sicrhau bod yna'n digwydd ar draws Cymru.
Question 7, Mike Hedges.
What advice is the Welsh Government giving to schools to identify children who are self-harming?
Well, counselling services are available for all 11 to 18-year-olds and Year 6 pupils who are experiencing emotional difficulties. One of the actions in the Talk to Me 2 action plan, which is currently, I think the member knows, is out to consultation, is around raising awareness on suicide and self-harm among staff in schools.
I very much welcome that government initiative. There is a substantial amount of self-harming by young people taking place, and whilst most of it is not life-threatening, it does show that such young people are disturbed or depressed. Will the government promote schools taking action to help children who self-harm?
Yes, again, this is, as I say, there is a consultation process that is taking place at the moment. That's due to conclude on the 5th of March. The document sets out the Welsh Government's proposed approach to suicide and self-harm over the next 5 years, and it does advocate certain actions relating to young people. And of course, identifying self-harm and identifying the risk of suicide is an important part of the care school can offer, and so being able to offer staff the training to spot those possibilities, it will be an important part of combating the problem in the future.
Andrew Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, when you look back in the records of Welsh Government support for children's mental health services here in Wales, there's been report after report. I've gone back this morning, 2000, 2006, 2011, and as recently now as 2015, identifying a lack of funding and sustainable funding for children's mental health services here in Wales. Are you, and I appreciate there's pressure on the public purse, but are you confident that the money that the government is making available to help with counselling and help with support services when it comes to young people is sufficiently directed to put the best effect to that resource that you're making available? And are you confident that that money is enough to deal with the issues that we're faced in children's mental health services?
Well, yes, in September 2010, all secondary schools in Wales have offered counselling services. They were supported by a £13 million grant between 2008 and 2013 for the development of that service. And of course, legislation was introduced last year which requires local authorities to make reasonable provision of independent counselling services to all children and young people, as well as those between the ages of 11 and 18, as well as those in year 6 of the primary school. And at the same time, money was transferred, £4.5 million was transferred to the Revenue Support Grant for the continued support of this service. Bear in mind, of course, that if I understand rightly, those counsellors can refer to CAMS anyway. So it's not a question of the two services operating independently of each other. But the approach we take is that it's best that these matters are identified early, dealt with early by counselling, rather than being in a situation when too many are referred to CAMS without having the opportunity of resolving their issues through the counselling service. And we believe that's exactly what's been happening.
Question 8, Keith Davis.
Diolch Llywydd. Am wnaeth Prif Weinidog roi diweddariad ar dwf addysg Gymraeg?
Wel, mae cynyddu mynediad i bobl o bob oed i addysg cyfrwng Cymraeg a hefyd cefnogi'r iaith Gymraeg yn parhau i fod yn flaenoriaeth i Lywodraeth Cymru.
Diolch. Wythnos nesaf, fydd agoriad swyddogol Ysgol Gymraeg Ffwrnys. Fydd yn cynnig addysg o ansawdd i 450 o blant. Mewn cyfarfod Cymdeithas yr Iaith yng Nghyfyrddin 10 diwrnod yn ôl, nath cynrychiolwyr o Sir Gar ddweud oherwydd y twf mewn addysg Gymraeg yn Llanelli bod nhw'n edrych ar y posibilrwydd o gael ail ysgol gyfun Gymraeg na. Ydych chi'n cytuno dy fi bod hwnna yn mynd i fod yn werthfawr iawn i'r iaith?
Croesawu hwnna, wrth gwrs, Milan i'r awdurdod lleol i sicrhau bod yna ddigon o lefydd ar gael i addysg Gymraeg. Wrth gwrs, mae strategaethau, mae rhaid nhw i ysgrifennu mwyn dangos am ha ffordd maen nhw'n mynd i hybu'r iaith Gymraeg trwy addysg yn ei ardaloedd nhw. Ond mae fi'n galonogol wrth gofio'r ffaith bod Llanelli ar un adeg yn dre, yn wedi gan i'r rhyfel, oedd yn Gymraeg i iaith. Mae'r Gymraeg wedi colli llawer o dir, wedi gan i'r dre dros ers hynny, a mae'n galonogol i feddwl bod yna lawer o bobl yn eisiau gweld i plant yn cael addysg drwy gyfrwng Gymraeg. Rai ohonyn bydd yn meddwl sydd o ddarrieni oedd yn siarad Cymraeg, nhw falle yn deall Cymraeg, a mae'n sicrhau bod i plant yn gallu siarad Cymraeg unwaith to mwyn bod y Gymraeg yn dod mewn i'r teulu. A fyna'n rhywbeth gwrs i werthfawrogi.
Susie Davis.
Diolch yn fawr, Llywydd. Mewn ymateb diweddar i gwestiwn ysgrifenedig, honnodd y gweinidog addysg y bydd toriadau yn y gyllideb addysg yn cael effaith leiaf bosib ar y strategaeth addysg cyfrwng Cymraeg oherwydd bod cyllidebau eraill o fewn yr adran addysg ysgiliau yn cefnogi datblygiad y Gymraeg o fewn y system addysg. Roedd y cymorth hwn, quote, nid yn hawdd i faintioli, ond cyfanswm gefnogaeth ariannol ar gyfer yr iaith Gymraeg mewn addysg yn arwyddocawol uwch. Nawr, sut gallwch weid bod cefnogaeth ariannol ar gyfer yr iaith yn arwyddocawol uwch os, yn ôl cyfaddefiad a'ch llywodraeth ei hun, ni allu rei cyfrifo?
Wel, mae rai fi weid, sef aelod ddim yn aelod o blaid, lle maen nhw'n torri y cyllideb addysg o rhwng 12 a 20%. Byddwn ni'n cymryd mwy o sylw felly bystau i weid, ond ni'n digon hyderus bod y strategaethau sydd yn cael ei ddatblygu gan awdurdod lleol yn ddigon cryf mwyn sicrhau bod y Gymraeg yn cael ei hybu a bod yna ddigon lefydd ar gael i rhena sydd eisiau i plant i gael addysg trwy gyfrwng Gymraeg.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd. Gweithio bai o symudiadau mwy calonogol yn llefydd fegus Llanelli, mae'r adolygiad pro tem o'r strategaeth iaith Gymraeg yn dangos nad oes modd cyflawni targedau sydd yn y strategaeth gan y Llywodraeth fel mae twf yn digwydd y hyn y byd dros Gymru gyfan. Fydd na adolygiad a gwerthusiad llawn yn cael ei cyhoeddi yn ôl beth wy'n deall yn y gwanwyn yma. Wy'n gobeithio mawr byddwch chi'n cyhoeddi hwnna fel Llywodraeth mwy fi nag sy'n bosib fel bod ni'n graffu cafu hwnna. Os mae'n ymddangos i fi bod yna bwlch rhwng y cynlluniau strategaethau Cymraeg lleol a beth yw amcanion chi fel Llywodraeth cenedlaethol. Ydych chi'n cytuno bod y bwlch yna yn bodoli, a pa gamau pendant sydd gyda chi mewn golwg i gau y bwlch yna?
Mae wahaniaethau wrth gwrs rhwng awdurdodau lleol yng Nghymru, ac wrth gwrs mae'r gweithredu ynglyn â'r ysgolion yn digwydd trwyddo'r awdurdodau lleol. Serch hynny, wrth gwrs, ni wedi gweud wrth nhw bod rhaid nhw'n cael cynlluniau strategol mwyn hybu addysg Gymraeg, a mae'r rhan fwyaf o'r awdurdodau lleol, sy'n 19 yn rhaid nawr, wedi sicrhau bod cynlluniau wedi cael i roi i ni fel Llywodraeth ta beth. Ond mae'n wir i weid bod yr heriau wahanol ym mhob rhan o Gymru. Mae'n rhai rhan o Gymru, mae'r twf dal i fod yna, rhannau eraill, a mae'n Siri yn enghraifft o hwn lle dyw'r twf ddim wedi bod yn mor fawr a felly mae mewn sawl rhan arall o Gymru. Dyna pham wrth gwrs ni mo'n sicrhau bod yr awdurdodau lleol yn ystyried i rôl nhw ynglyn â hybu'r iaith Gymraeg a addysg Cymraeg, a dyna pham wrth gwrs mae ni wedi gofyn am gynlluniau strategol mwyn sicrhau bod ni'n deall beth yw eu cynlluniau nhw, a wedyn wrth gwrs i Gymru camau fel Llywodraeth mwyn sicrhau bod nhw yn symud mlaen gyda'r cynlluniau sydd gyda ni fel Llywodraeth.
Kirsty Williams.
First Minister, today the Cabinet of Powys County Council will consider a PricewaterhouseCoopers review that recommends that up to 3 secondary schools in Powys should close, and also some Welsh medium streams in English high schools should also close. Are you aware of these proposals to close Welsh medium streams, as well as 3 standalone high schools? And what advice do you have for parents who are ringing my office concerned as to where their children will go for their education in the future, and who are having to make decisions about whether to send their children to Welsh medium units that might not exist in a few years' time?
Well, these are matters, of course, for the Council to explain, not for government, and it's a matter for them to decide how they will resolve the issues that your constituents have raised. I mean, as the leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats knows, there is potentially a ministerial role here in terms of examining decisions that are taken by local education authorities. So I can't say more on a particular case, but the issues that she raises will be for Powys County Council to answer in the first place.
Thank you, Mr Minister. We now move to item 2, which is the business.